My boss tried to push me to quit so the company wouldn't have to pay my benefits, but I went to the owner first. A few years ago, I worked in the marketing department of a medium-sized company in South America. The owner was very involved in the business, and many of the managers were people he had known long before the company even existed. Some were old classmates or close friends from his personal circle, and they had been placed in leadership positions. Another important detail is that there were basically no women in positions of power in the company. Our marketing team had 4 people: the marketing manager, the sub-manager, my direct boss, me as marketing coordinator, and one person responsible for audio-visual production. Even though we worked in the same area, the audio-visual role was under my supervision. At that time, I was 27 and the only woman in the team. My boss was 40 and the audiovisual employee was also older than me. My boss had almost the same time in the company as I did. I joined in early November and he had joined about 1 month before me. Before this job, he had spent years living on different beaches around South America, doing freelance web design and remote projects. He had no experience managing people or working inside a company. He got the position because he was the marketing manager's best friend since childhood. Very quickly, it became obvious that he did not really understand many parts of the job. On paper, he was the boss. In practice, I was doing the work in the marketing area. I handled strategy, planning, campaign ideas, coordination with other departments, events, and the marketing budget. My boss mostly delegated things to me and then presented the results as if they were his. At the beginning, he tried to act friendly with me, almost like we were friends, but in a very manipulative way that made me suspicious, even if it was hard to explain why. Later, I realized it was a way to make me accept doing more and more work that was not part of my role, but difficult to refuse because he asked in a friendly way.